Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm waving at you. Everybody's waving at me. Okay, perfect. My name is Audra Bonney, and I actually am the Senior Associate Director and International Student Specialist with the Graduate Career Development Office. Um, it's so nice to see all of your faces. We have about 30 people online right now for this Networking Effectively session with our friends from Keystone Partners. We also have Professor Wasserman, who is here, and I have to say thank you to him, for he is the one who introduced us to David and Debbie to begin with, and is a big part of us having this session today on the important topic of networking. Again, I just wanted to say from myself and our office that we're so happy to see all of you. We really miss being on campus, seeing you face to face, shaking hands, giving hugs. But again, this is our new normal for now. And again, we are vigilant and persistent in our desire to help you and be available for you going forward as you continue to search for internships and jobs. The future is bright down the road. We have a little ways to get there. But again, I think it's really important that everybody continue this process of networking and having a good positive attitude as we move forward. So today is part of that. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you to David and Debbie as well for joining us. I did want to share a bit about David Hennessy and Debbie Noches. So in terms of a quick bio, I took some information from LinkedIn that I wanted to share. So Debbie Noches is a senior vice president with Keystone Partners, which is New England's leading consulting firm that specializes in career management. She consults with organizations and senior leaders on complex career transition and planning issues. Her work is focused in the biotech, professional services, technology, not-for-profit, and higher education spaces. And her area of expertise, like David's, is in the career transition, talent management, coaching, career pathing, and organizational development areas. And more briefly, just because of time, David, you're certainly very important. He also is a senior vice president, does similar things to Debbie. One thing that he's very much noted for is the fact that he has led an HR human resources podcast called The Hennessy Report. So if you are interested in hearing about topics specific to human resources, he knows quite a few people in the field, and again brings this important information to the masses. So, thank you, Debbie and David, for being here. Again, they have actually been with us for 3 years, and this is our 3rd year having David and Debbie join us for this networking session. And again, I just wanted to thank the GFA as well. I see Vatsal Sheth here, he's raising his hand. Exxon, there's a number of GFA board members that are with us today who have helped organize this and also who have helped to promote and so forth. So thank you to the GFA. I just wanted to get the students involved very quickly, just to give David and Debbie a sense for who is in the space today. So if you could tell me, raise your hand virtually because I can't see all of you. If you could virtually share if you are an MS student, just raise your hand. Virtually raise your hand. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of MS students here. How about if you are an international student? Okay, so I'm going to clear your hands. If you can raise your hand again, if you're an international student. So we have a good number of MS students. We have a good number of international students. One last question, and everybody, if you can participate, I know you're there and excited. So if you can share with me if you're graduating in May, raise your hand virtually. So Joe is, and Taylor is, Nikita, Valerie. Hi, Valerie. Okay. So we have a number of people who are graduating in May. We also have a number of students, certainly it sounds like, who are looking for internships. So David and Debbie, those are our students here today. And I did want to make sure that our chat function is working here. So if you can chat with me, open up your chat, students, and just quickly let me know where you're zooming in from. So if you can type in where you're zooming in from. Are you in Waltham? Are you in India? Are you in Chicago? I mean, I'm sure you're coming from everywhere. Oh, many of you coming from Waltham. Are you at Bentley? You shouldn't be there. I see a number of people in Massachusetts, so which is the way it should be. So zooming in from Burlington, we see people from Waltham, lots of people from Waltham, from Belmont, from Arlington, and I'm actually coming in myself from Lexington, not too far, and Steve is coming in from Framingham in the basement of his home. He's shaking his head yes. And David and Debbie, you'll have to tell us where you're from in a moment, but so thank you very much, everybody. It sounds like we have a great group of people here. We have about 39 in total. And, you know, going forward, I just wanted to share a few ground rules. So just to let you know, because the group is larger, I would like to make sure that when you are not speaking, that everybody keep their mics off to reduce the amount of noise that we all hear. I do encourage students, because again, the group is larger, to provide their questions through chat throughout. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box, and I'll do my best, or Steve will do as well, to share that with the group. And certainly we will have a presentation in a few moments. And then what we'll do is have a formal Q&A at the end, and we'll finish when we finish. How does that sound? Everybody shake your head. Okay, good? Yeah, okay, perfect. So David and Debbie, are you ready? If you're, oops, I gotta unmute.
Unmute David and Debbie.
I gotta unmute David and Debbie. Hold on one second.
We're ready.
Oh, perfect. They can unmute themselves. All right, so if you can share your screen.
Yep.
All right, I'm ready too.
Hey, Dave.
Does everybody see that? Audra?
Yep.
Yes, good.
Good to go.
Good to go. Great. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. What a large group. This is terrific. And I'm excited to experience this online learning that I'm hearing so much about, that all the universities have moved to. Is everything okay?
Yes.
Everything is perfect.
Oh, great. Okay. So, yes, this, you know, I love being a part of this and experiencing this firsthand for myself. So thank you for joining us. Dave and I, we have a similar role at Keystone Partners. And really networking is our livelihood. We go out and consult with HR professionals on many topics related to career management. So, but we also do an awful lot of networking. We run networking events. We participate in networking events. We're on boards for organizations that run networking events. So we're happy to share with you today our experiences and some ideas we have for you as you enter or continue on in your journey in your career. So this is going to be Dave and I are going to kind of toggle back and forth and share with you some stories and our experiences. And as Audra said, if you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll be happy to try and address them for you. Dave, anything you want to say?
Well, I'm here from Reading, Massachusetts, Audra, and all of you students. So it's great to meet a whole new class here at Bentley, and happy to help you in your networking, which is the #1 career management tool for transition, for looking for work, for career development. It's probably the most powerful thing as we're coaching people at Keystone. I mean, really what our work is at Keystone is helping people navigate a career transition. That's what we do all day long. And 70 to 80% of all positions are landed through networking, sometimes in combination with other avenues like LinkedIn and Indeed and Glassdoor and all those things. But networking is, as you probably heard from Audra and Steve and the whole team, it's just the primary thing. So we're excited to talk about it. As Debbie said, we do it all day long as part of our job. And we also coach people on how to be effective in networking skills.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Dave. So we are going to start with something very basic. Because we know when you're entering the job market, or you're attending a networking event, or you're attending a career fair, sometimes it can be a little intimidating to come up with conversation starters. So we put this slide together just to give you some ideas of some things that you might start topics you might use to start a conversation. And the purpose of the macaroons is because they look delightful, but more than that, think of this as a stack, and that each macaron relates to one of the topics on the left. So sometimes when you go into an event or you go to a networking meeting and you're trying to think of things to talk about, picture these cookies and associate something with each one. So for example, this cookie right here might be where you ask questions about where do you live. This one might be related to what do you do for work. This one could be family. This could be hobbies, and some of these other ones, about books or travel. And certainly you're not going to get into all of these topics, but it's a good way to get a conversation started because you're trying to find a commonality with the person you're talking to. So Dave and I thought we would model a conversation with you. Dave will ask me the questions as a conversation starter if we were to go to an event, so that you can just get a flavor for how it might go.
And I just, before we start, Deb, I like to say that there's so much going on in the world today. Right. And when we start talking about an event, everybody's probably thinking, well, every event I know about is canceled right now. Mm-hmm. And that is the case. So, but there are a lot of Zoom calls. We're having a lot of Zoom calls with Zoom and Skype, and you can convert a lot of networking meetings to video conference, and these things still apply. And I think the basis for this and what Debbie's laying out in networking is that you don't usually jump right into, where you're taking your career, what you want to do next. You don't usually start with the ask or how they can help you or how you can help them. Because that's really what networking is about. It's about relationship building, so you can get to talking about how you can help each other in your careers and maybe in other places. So this is, how do you warm up a conversation? And so I might, if I met Debbie at an online event or at a conference, in fact, Debbie and I go to HR networking groups at Bentley every month. And we get thrown into these situations where it's called HRLF. And one of our colleagues is on the board of that organization, and it's senior HR people. And it can sometimes be a stressful, where you're in a big group of people and there's people there that you want to connect with. How do you enter into a conversation? We have a couple rules about that. If you see two people talking, usually leave them alone because it's hard to break in. Ones and threes, if somebody's all alone, great place to go up and introduce yourself. Three people, usually you find a group of three people talking. One of those people's not active right at that moment. So coming up and engaging a conversation with them, and maybe not shaking their hand anymore. Maybe it's elbows.
Do a fist bump or an elbow bump.
All sorts of options. And then just saying something like, oh, nice to meet you. I'm Dave Hennessy. What's your name? Debbie would reply. Debbie Noche.
Hi, I'm Debbie. Do you want to do the...
Sure, we're doing it now. Yep.
You're doing it now. Okay. You jumped right in there.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Debbie Noche from Keystone Partners. Nice to meet you.
Oh, I was going to ask you where you worked. What kind of work do you do there at Keystone? What's your business?
Yeah, I work on the business development team. So I go out and I talk to HR folks and HR professionals about what Keystone does and how we can assist their company with either career transition services or leadership development, executive coaching, management training. So it's a wide variety of things, but I really enjoy what I do.
That's fascinating. I know some people in that industry very well. What do you do when you're not working? What do you do for fun and travel?
Well, we do travel. My husband and I do travel quite a bit. We unfortunately had to just cancel a trip to Italy for our 30th wedding anniversary, but we'll get to it at some point. And I like to work out. I like to walk. I love to be in the outdoors. I like to be in nature. I do a little bit of golfing. I play tennis. I read a lot.
That's great.
Yeah. I do a lot of crossword puzzles.
We could go on and on, but I think people get it. You know, it's a way to just bridge into a conversation and to warm it up before you start talking about the things that could be helpful to each of you and your personal development or career development.
Right. And I might also, Dave, as this continued, I would try to ask you some similar questions as well.
Sure.
You know, as you're asking me questions in the dialogue, I would ask you some questions too.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Does bringing up a conversation about hobbies, I feel like at times if there's a big, or if you can tell that the person is older who you're speaking to, does that come across a little bit like that's not really your place coming as a student? I feel like if I were to ask someone about, you know, oh, what are your hobbies? I feel like it's like, I don't know, it kind of comes across a little bit. Do you guys kind of get what I'm saying?
I do. And I think you have to trust your intuition, right? I think there's certain situations that you might not go there. It might seem too early in a relationship to hobbies. You might do it in a backdoor way, like if you're in their space and you notice something on their desk or a photograph on a golf course and says, looks like you're an avid golfer. You know, so there could be some cues that might help you point to hobbies. But I agree with you. That might be too quick for just meeting somebody in the outset. Although you might know something about them, a little bit about their interests from how you're introduced to them. And so, yeah, you have to trust your judgment based on the situation. And intuition is such an important thing. One of our consultants that Debbie and I work with says intuition's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. If you feel like, oh, I don't know if I want to ask that person this, or I think I should walk this way back from campus today, or I think I should call an old friend from high school. And I'm not sure why. Our intuition might give us ideas about things that you should trust. We'll give you lots of advice today. Your intuition is still very important, and trust that as part of this process. So I agree with you.
The more you do it, the better you get at it and the more comfortable you become with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, networking, it really is proactive, and it's sometimes people, when they think about networking, they think about those formal networking rooms. You know, they think about, okay, I'm in an event, and that is helpful to a lot of people in networking. But that we don't at Keystone really don't believe that's the #1 way to do networking. We really believe best way to do networking is one-to-one. It's usually through some relationships you already have. That people can introduce you to others that might have more information direction you're heading. And one of the things that we see people do instinctively is say, you know, I'm really looking for a job, or we have people that are in transition at Keystone, like I just lost my job and I'm trying to find another one. Can you help me? Or I'm interested in working at a company. And people sometimes when you approach that way will recoil a little bit because they're like, I don't have a job. I don't want to disappoint Debbie's friend or Dave's friend. Send me a resume, and it can sometimes quell discussion. But we find, and what we advise people to do, is really focus on advice and ideas. If you focus on that as part of the process, contacts, different organizations that might be good for you to work with or have an internship with will come naturally from the conversation. But it's really about this relationship building and looking for two-way benefit. You know, you want to make sure that you're looking for ways that you could possibly help that person and find out more about their work. So it's about getting advice and information and ideas and increasing your contacts. And usually that's in the later part of that meeting. Debbie, you might want to add to some of these things.
Yes, I do think that it is really important. And I think for every person you meet, you're increasing your networking group. And because each person you talk to might talk to a couple of other people. So you're just increasing your visibility in the job market. You know, you just never know. You might be talking with somebody and the next day they bump into somebody who's looking for candidates in the space that you're in and with the expertise that you have. And so you'll be top of mind at that point. And the more you do that, the better chances you have of finding a job quicker.
You know, there was an old coach in our industry that said, as you're thinking about networking, you're very interested, right? You want to meet these people, you want to find out about new companies and new people that have influence in those organizations, and you're very interested and you're getting a lot of information. Magical thing that happens, and it makes you more effective in your job search. You become more interesting as you develop, you acquire all this information about the industries you're targeting, about the people and players in those industries, and people will refer you at higher levels because you're more credible when you have the field you're heading in, the field you've studied, the industry that you're targeting. You go from interested to interesting, and it's a big part of the networking process.
Okay. And as Dave said earlier, 70–80% of job seekers find their new position by networking. You can use job boards and other tools that Dave mentioned to kind of see what's out in the market, what's available, but then you'll want to take that information and network to get yourself into that organization.
A funny thing about this stat, I mentioned this to everybody, of course. We all at Keystone mention this to everybody. And sometimes I'll really emphasize that with somebody, say, you know what, you're not going to get your new job by applying onto the company's career site or going through Indeed. That's not the, and whenever I make a big deal about it, that person gets the job that way. They get their job from just applying directly. So it's most of it, but you have to do the other things too. So, and usually it's a combination. And what I mean by that, I'll give you one example of a leader who was looking for a job. It was actually in our field in HR, and I knew this person very well. I didn't know the person that got the job very well. I knew the person that was the interim head of HR at a large hospital. And she said what this candidate did, first of all, she networked directly to me through our common contacts. She networked to the board of directors. So her name bubbled up down from the board to her. She went to that HR event, Bentley University, that we go to all the time, called HRLF, and she ran into this candidate again, and the search firm. They hired a recruiting firm because it was a high-level position. The search firm also presented this candidate. So and I don't know if she applied online too, probably that was part of it as well. So it's really about everything. It's about using all the tools that you have available to you. But networking is the one that brings it all together, and it's also the one where we find 70–80% of the people are successful finding their new job.
Thanks, Dave. So let's just talk for a minute about what it's not. So when you are out networking, it's not necessarily about asking for a job. It's not coming out and saying, do you have a job for me? It's about learning about that organization, learning about the different positions in the organization, learning more about the industry, and talking with them a little bit about the value you bring, what your interests are, what companies you're interested in. In fact, sometimes we suggest that you put a target list together of companies of interest to you. Excuse me a second. So it's not going out and specifically asking for a job. It's more about getting to know each other, letting them get to know you. I recently met with somebody who was looking for a job, and I was so impressed by this woman, both in her networking capability, how organized she was, how many people she was touching. But I felt like I wanted to go and help her find a job. And I felt very comfortable after talking with her of sort of recommending her for different jobs in my network, thinking about companies that might have openings, reaching out on her behalf to a couple of companies and getting her introduced into the organization. So she never asked me if I could find her a job or if she could have a job, but because of the conversation we had, and I saw how hard she was working at it and how qualified she was, and she had a good good 30-second commercial, if you will, about her background, I felt very comfortable in recommending her.
I have a similar story. I had a good friend of mine whose sister was looking to make a change in her career. She was shifting to IT. Maybe she was already in IT, but looking to go to a higher level. And she was networking with me, and she was so focused. I was happy to meet with her. I'm in this industry, so happy to help in any way I can. But one of the things that I was struck by is that she was so focused on whether we had a job at Keystone for her. And we're a small consulting firm. We already had an IT person. We only have one. And she was really pushing for like, whoa, how can I meet the person that hires for IT here? And she wasn't thinking more broadly about how I could be of help to her in the whole marketplace and connecting her with other people. So don't put your blinders on and be so narrowly focused on doing what Debbie said. It's just an example of what she's saying. Mm-hmm. Think broadly. Sometimes you might find yourself, you're in front of the hiring manager of the job that you could do. And that, if you're feeling that, again, trust your intuition. You probably would know that before you even sat down with the person. And you're switching to interview mode, and that's a little bit different. But we're talking about working here. We're not talking about being in that seat. If you find that you think you're in a networking meeting, but there is an opportunity, you certainly want to pursue it, but don't be so narrowly focused. Go wide. People will draw you back if they think you're a good fit for their organization, and they'll tell you, I think we have something here for you on my team, right, or on my neighbor's team here. So we'll tell you. The target list is a good idea. Debbie, we're going to talk about that. I can't remember if we had a slide on the target list.
I don't think we do. No.
I'm going to just mention it because you mentioned it, and there was another candidate we were coaching, and she used a target list so powerfully. She was in strategy consulting. And was pursuing another job at like Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey or Bain, one of those, Booz Allen, and smaller organizations too. And somebody had her connect with me because she knew I knew some people in that space. And we had a great discussion, like what Debbie and I are talking about. It was really about, we learned a little bit about each other personally, a lot about each other professionally, gave her some ideas. And then at the end of the discussion, she said, Dave, this is so helpful. I want to leave, thank you so much for your time. By the way, I want to leave this document with you. It was kind of a pushed up summary of a resume. We call it the networking profile. So it's kind of a condensed version of the resume in the top half of the page. And the bottom half of the page, she had target industries and specific organizations she was looking to make more contacts with. And she had a lot of information. She told me, Dave, I want to leave this with you. This is a great document. I mean, she said, this is a document I'm using. She didn't say it was great. I thought it was great. So she said, I'm using this to help me with my network. And here are some organizations I'm targeting. And she started to talk about the ones she had meetings with and ones that she was looking to make more contacts with, and some information she had about what was going on in those organizations. Again, she was not only interested, she was interesting. She knew some stuff that was valuable to me. And then she said the document over towards me and she said, Dave, is there anybody at any of these organizations that you think would be helpful to me now that you know a little bit about where I'm taking my career, that you think would be a good contact for me, where I could get some ideas and advice? Not, do you know if anybody has a job, or do you know, like, it was just like somebody that might be a good connection for me. And down, and those companies I mentioned to you were there, McKinsey and BCG. I knew some people at those organizations, and I said, sure, I know Dina Paris over at Boston Consulting Group. I'd be happy to connect you. And we talked about how do that, and you don't want to put too much on your network E. You want to try to pull work away from them. Say, can I reach out using your name? In this case, I said, I'm willing to do a joint email introduction. She says, oh, that's great. And so I did that. But then this is the powerful part. She just didn't say you and fold up the sheet or just leave the sheet with me. While the sheet was across from me, she just glanced down again at it. So I glanced down again at it, and I found another one or two contacts. So it's a powerful little tool. You got to decide, if that fits your style, and you wouldn't bring that document out in the middle of walking across campus at Bentley, as you run into somebody. But there are situations where it can be very powerful. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
Right. Thanks, Dave.
Hey, Debbie and Dave. I actually have a question from a student I want to kind of jump in here with. Emily actually asks, this is the first time that we're all meeting you, how would you suggest that, you know, a person approach you and then start networking with you? What do you think about that? So they don't know you. They're a bunch of
Oh, well, if you don't know
students
the
that are here
person,
today. Yeah.
you're saying if you don't know the person. Oh, yeah, it's always through connections. So this is, and I think we have some slides on this, Debbie, right? Where do you find the, so this will come out, but I think this is what we're going to say here is that you have to really think about your whole life, people you've gone to school with, people that you've worked with in past internships, people that are in your family's business, people that you, from your hometown, it's wherever, people that you run into at these, career fairs, people that you've went through. So yeah, these are the different situations. It's who can introduce you. And we usually say, you know, like I was just talking about, this person got introduced to me through a common contact, and I knew this person. It was a Keystone coach, actually, but it could have been somebody outside. You know, it could have been, like I told you before, my friend who had that sister who wanted to get into IT or into IT at our organization. He made the introduction. So that's the way you get these meetings. You find people through that you're already connected to, and ask, and then get together with them for networking, or have that meeting over Zoom or networking calls. Say, I'm really looking to expand my network and get ideas, advice. Go through the same thing with people you already know about. Show them your target list of industries or organizations, and brainstorm them about who they might know that would be good for them to know. So that's the process. If you don't start with you're in this meeting, right? You have to get the meeting, and you do that through the people you already know.
That's right. I'd like to share a story with you about how it came to be that I'm working at Keystone. So I was actually a stay-at-home mom for 12 years. I had a career at Eastman Kodak Company and decided I wanted to re-enter the workforce. So I had a good friend from college, my college days. We were RAs together. We were class officers together, and saw that he was working at Keystone. So I said, hey, could I come in and see you, meet for lunch? I'll bring you lunch. And I'd love to have you just take a look at my resume. And I'd just like to talk to you about different things that you think I might, you know, jobs that might be good for me. So we did that. And I came in and he was looking at my resume and he said, oh my goodness, we have 2 openings here at Keystone that I think you'd be qualified for. Let me talk to the hiring manager about you, who, as it turns out, it was someone that I knew from college as well. 3 of us went to the same school. So I never did expect that to happen. That's an unusual situation. But once again, it was using my network. And this was many years after I was out of college. So you know, keeping your network alive and the people you know, they can be very helpful to you.
And I think, okay, you're gonna say something, Deb, you done?
No, go ahead.
Okay, the tool Zoom is a very powerful. I'm just thinking about what you might be thinking. How do I do this in this environment? I can't get face to face with anybody. The Zoom tool is free for one-on-one usage. You get up to 40 minutes for free, just for one-on-one networking or whatever meetings. So I really recommend you use this powerful tool, or other ones, you know, Skype, FaceTime. There's a lot of them out there. GoToMeeting. Zoom really, I think it's kind of bubbling up as the best tool. Everybody I talk to seems to think it's the one that works the most. And you can set up a lot of these kinds of meetings with old friends of yours, colleagues at school right now. Think about people that they might be going for some similar jobs, but they might be looking in a different geography, and start to have these kinds of conversations with people that are already in your network, people that are all around the globe. I know a lot of you come from different parts of the world, and you have people that are in your family's business, or somebody that was a neighbor's business, and ask them, I was wondering if I could get some ideas and advice from you, and have this kind of a meeting with them. And you can show them the networking document, screen share, and show them the networking profile that we talked about of the target organizations, and have a face-to-face discussion. So you really can use technology to make this go faster. Debbie and I have always, in Keystone, we've always advised the #1 way to do networking is in person. But the technology is enabling, and the world the way it is today, technology and the way the world is today really make Zoom and other tools very valuable in your networking, because you can do so much more of it like this.
I'm going to take a pause here and see if we have any questions.
Debbie, we absolutely have some questions. Thank you for making the time for it. Let's see here. We have something from Nikita. She's asking, what do you do when someone tells you that they'll reach back to you, but they don't? How do you actually follow up on that situation?
That happens all the time in networking. I alluded to it a little bit when I said most of what you're going to get in it, because what will happen, and this happens to me, I'll admit it, that I do a lot of networking meetings from people at Keystone, and my day job gets in the way sometimes. So I might have met with somebody and said, oh, I'll do a joint email and I'll do this and I'll do, and then my boss says, you got this big project, Dave, and then the phone rings, and then so much happens to people. There's so much else going on in their life. So don't assume the best of intentions with people that haven't replied. And the other thing is so just gently follow up with them if you haven't. Every week or so, don't ever, how am I going to say this? Try not to make the person feel guilty. So say there was an email exchange, I would recommend not doing this. Replying and say, I haven't heard back from you. You said you were going to do blah, blah, blah. The subtle ways that you can remind people, they probably know back in their mind they didn't deliver on what they were said that they were going to do for you, connect you or get back to you. So a fresh email. I thought I'd touch base. I was wondering if we can chat, together, not grabbing that last email where they never replied to it and say, we haven't heard back. So assume the best of people, and then try to get a lot of what you need from your networking contacts in that meeting. In other words, don't say, will you send me that after, or please do an email intro. If they offer it, it's great. Try to get as much as you can then. So if there's somebody that they recommend you talk to, say, great, I'll reach out to them. Can I use your name? Do you happen to have their contact information with you? So take it off their plate, because if you leave a lot on your networkee's plate, they're going to go back to work and they're going to be,
Right.
you probably won't be able to get it all done.
Many times we will, you can write the introductory email of what you would like them to say, so that it's so much easier for them to, just cut and paste or forward or whatever. So like what Dave's saying is, make it easy on the person that's going to help you. Ask them if that would be helpful. Most times they'll say yes. The other thing that I do too is try to put myself in their seat. So how would I want people to reach out to me, and what would sit right with me and what wouldn't? I think that can be very helpful, of being considerate of their time. I think one of the hardest things in the job search mode is waiting to hear, because that's what you're completely focused on. But I think sometimes we forget that others have a million things going on in their jobs, and this isn't their top priority. It doesn't mean they don't want to help, but it's not their top priority. But it can seem like forever as the time goes by. So I find that if I put myself in their shoes, try to think of things that might be helpful to them, or how often you should reach out without annoying them, I think is important to think about.
Yeah, and around every 10 days, if somebody offered to meet or send something to you or connect you to somebody, give them a week or two. Again, trust your intuition about the relationship you have with them and how busy they might be. But it's okay to keep on following up. I back up to this point. Don't keep on mentioning that they haven't responded or how many times you've followed up. Always make it seem like it's the first time that you've followed up with them.
That's right. And it is a marathon, not a sprint. You just have to be prepared that it's going to take some time, that you'll get there, but it's going to take some time. Any other questions, Audra?
There are a few, but I'm just going to continue on the same lines of following through. I think you've given a lot of suggestions from your perspectives as to what would work, and this whole fresh idea and making it easy for them. But are there any other this is a question that students typically will ask about how to follow through. How often do I follow through? What's annoying? What is reasonable? So again, any other strategies for doing that effectively?
I would say also, sometimes you might come across something, either an article or something online that reminds you of this person, and maybe it was something you talked about in your networking meeting. And so you can just simply, without asking them to follow up on what you talked about, but say, hey, I was just thinking about you. I saw this online. I thought about you, and I thought I would send it to you. I thought you'd find this of interest.
That's good. And the other thing I'd say is that your network, people that you've already met with, I'm not sure of the questions if it's somebody that they haven't quite met with yet, or somebody that they met with and promised to do something. But let's do with the person you've met with, and maybe they offered some ideas and advice, and maybe you have a contact, and they also owed you something too. I think one of the things that your network craves, people that have met and talked with you and offered advice and ideas, they want to know if it was helpful. So one of I know this happens when I'm networking with people both ways, that I want to know if that idea or that advice or that contact, that person I connected them to, was valuable. So when you reach back out with like maybe an article like Debbie said, or something that you think might be interesting, also include something that they did for you that you want to thank them for and how it was helpful. And even if you can't think of anything that was really perfect, find a way to make it good. Like find something that they did that was helpful. I'm sure you can find something. And they'll appreciate that. And then would be a trigger to remind them that, oh, I also offered that other contact. Or you might even put something in there. And I'd also love to meet Susan, who you offered to connect me to as well, at the right time, whenever that works for you. Like there's little things you can do, appreciation for whatever they've done so far. And that will, a lot of people have that list of to-dos that they have, and it will remind them of the thing they owed you, whether to call you back or
That's right.
So
you don't always have to be so direct.
Yes.
You don't have to hit it directly. Okay, I'm going to move on if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So you probably are sitting there saying, okay, so what are the areas, where can I network? So first, if you've had internships or even in summer jobs, think about the people you worked with directly, that people that you've met. It could be, like I said, even in the summer job, if you had a manager or you had somebody who was a professional, once again, picking their brain. You can say, me, I worked really well for you. This is what I want to do next. Who would you suggest that I talk to? So that's one area. Also, a company, if you worked for a company, so people who worked in the same organization, but maybe a different department or division. So maybe in your work at a company, you had to interface with a different department. So it doesn't always have to be people within your department, but if you met somebody who you found to be an interesting person, who seemed to be very knowledgeable, you might also network with somebody in a different department or division of an organization.
And these could be part-time jobs you had in high school.
Right.
Could be, where you could translate these to like work. Could be, I was on a sports team with this person. It's anybody that you had collaboration with.
Yep, and clubs. Personal, so family, friends, alumni can be very good networking contacts, and acquaintances. Once again, personal, just really being aware of who you're around and who might be able to help you with your job search, and who they might know and be able to introduce you to. And then this could be from internships, people professionally, similar work, but it may be a different company. So these are just some ideas that we put together of where you can network, or you can find networking.
And this, can we go back there? You don't have to go back. I just want to say one thing, that people sometimes think, oh, I have to just network with somebody that's at the company
right
that I want to work at, or I have to network with the person that does the job I want to do, or the boss of the person at the boss of the job I want to do. They think really that way. And we have had so many examples of people talking about where they're taking their career, plumber, and it's the plumber's wife who is the hiring person or knows somebody in that industry. You just never know where it could come from. So don't discount people that are from these non-professional environments for networking, because you can get to anybody, you know, through a couple contacts. And so effective networking can start from any place in your circle of contacts.
We joke amongst our team at Keystone, Dave met a networking contact on a train that led to some business. Our boss met someone in a hair salon. I met somebody at the gym. So it's really just keeping it top of mind.
We know that you have your 30-second commercial, and either your whole 30-second commercial or parts of it. The more you're talking about that, again, using your intuition and the situation you're in, the more you're sharing that with people, the more likely that these ideas might bubble up.
That's right. Somebody is looking to join, Audra. Do you see that note?
Oh, yep. I will take a look. Go ahead.
Okay, so we also know and can acknowledge that, you know, these meetings can be awkward, whether it's it's a coffee that you've set up and it's a one-on-one, or it's a one-on-one video, a Zoom meeting. We know that it can be awkward, and everybody comes at it differently. But some things you can do to take that awkwardness away is to prepare. So before you go into a meeting, if you have if you're meeting someone on Zoom, you'll want to look at their LinkedIn profile. You want to be prepared. You want to know something about this person. So you need to do your homework. If it's someone you want to know about the company and the work that they do, there's a lot you can do. And they say today, you know, any meeting you go into, people already know a lot about you, and you should know about them as well. And if you're prepared by doing this background work and homework, that really increases your confidence, because you know you're going to have some things to talk about. You know what the commonalities might be, to be able to, you know, have a conversation outside of business and get to know this person and establish a relationship. We also talk about, you know, setting some goals for yourself. So if you were going to an event, you know, of having some goals or objectives for yourself, you could say, I'm going to walk out I'm going to make sure I have at least 5 conversations at this event, and I'm going to come away with 15 business cards. Whatever it might be, setting some goals and objectives, particularly if you go to an event. Many times there's a list of the attendees. So if you can get there early and take a look at that, so you know who's there, who you want to be on the lookout for, that can be very helpful. Let's see, listen and ask follow-up questions. So in other words, you want a dialogue, a two-way dialogue going on, as opposed to you just asking questions and them answering it. So make sure you listen to the responses and then ask some follow-up questions from what they've said. And also asking questions about what are employees looking for. I know, you know, you always have this feeling that I've got to let them know how great I am and what I bring to the table, but it's also really important to find out what the employer is looking for. You know, there are organizations that can be doing layoffs on one hand and hiring on the other because they need a different skill set. It can be, you know, so it's really about honing in on what it is and what they're looking for. You know, culture can be very important. What kind of culture, what's the culture of the organization? And so what are they looking for in the employees that they hire? What's important to this organization?
And I just to follow up on what Debbie said, I think that's really important. And that word important is very helpful. In fact, there's a question that comes from the business development and sales world that I recommend for candidates, people that are in the networking process or in the interview process even, to ask across from that's at the company that you're interested in. And maybe it's not the hiring manager, maybe it is. You might say, what's important to you about the person that you hire into this organization or for this role? or what's important to you about the way that people work here? I mean, because sometimes it might be hard if somebody's not in HR or whatever, they might not know how to answer a culture question. But if you say, what's important to you about the way you all work here, or what's important to you about the person you bring in? For example, there might be a spec, the job specifications, where it has all these things. If you're sitting there in the interview, you're probably qualified. You probably have, you have the MS from Bentley University, and you have the right makeup or whatever. The emotional buying cues are off the job spec. It's what kind of person, how do they operate? Do they fit with us and how we operate? Those questions that information you can get from a question like that. What's important to you? You can ask different people in that organization, and you might get different answers. You might say, oh, I don't know if I want to work there. It doesn't sound like they're all on the same page. Or you might really like what you're hearing, and it might help you tailor how you talk about your background and the examples you give. So we're going a little bit into interviewing, I know, but you can use this in networking too. So that question, what's important to you about, not what's the most important thing, because you want to see if you can get a few answers. You don't want just that one thing, and usually people don't give the most important thing first. So what is important to you about, and put different endings on it. It's a very powerful question from sales and business development that we use, and I try to remember to use it. I should use it more.
Audra, I noticed that I think some questions came in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the questions actually has to do with awkward situation. A student was talking about, I know we've been talking a lot about kind of the in-person networking, but the question about asking for an informational interview of people who are at home, and how that may be a little awkward and feeling like you're imposing on somebody. How do you actually do that?
Asking for an informational interview when they're at home?
Yeah, now that people are kind of more at home.
I see.
As opposed to meeting at a conference or meeting outside, asking, kind of imposing on somebody who is, at home.
Right. I think first I think you want to acknowledge what's going on, and that, in even acknowledging or saying something like, I hope this is appropriate, but I would like to see if you have some time to talk with me. And I would give a longer period of time. It doesn't have to be today, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but could we set up some time to have a brief conversation? And what would work best for you? You've got to flex to their schedule if they agree to meet with you. Does that answer the question?
You could use the person's name that introduced you. Audra said it'd be great for us to connect. I know we're all in a different environment right now, and I'm happy to do a call or Zoom meeting in just a few minutes. I think people do not expect to have an hour-long discussion like we're going to have right now on a Zoom or a phone call. Zoom's better if people are willing to do it, but if you're not sure if they have the technology set up or they seem a little uncomfortable about it, take the phone discussion. That's a lower barrier to just get on the phone. People don't have to dress up for it. I get the shirt on, but I have jeans on too, right? So people think about so if a phone is fine, and leverage the person that connected you or your past relationship with them. Audra said it would be so good to connect with you. And if they say this isn't a good time because I'm really taking care of my kids, and say, well, when would be a better time? We could push it out a couple of weeks. So if you gently ask a second time, it usually works. It's okay this is an example of if you have ever been apple picking. If you have to tug on the tree, you're probably asking too much. You shouldn't pull that apple. And a tug, you could ask again. So just, a little pressure is okay. A little guilt, using the person's name that connected you or some relationship we've had with them. They said it would be so good. Maybe we could push it out a week. So
yeah, and maybe if you really just like David and Debbie are really showcasing some levity, positive attitude. You can see they're smiling a lot. They really like to work with people. So I think those are some takeaways that you can utilize yourself when you're asking the question. Don't assume it's imposing, but just give it a go and be kind, and that should work. right?
Yes,
Right.
and I'll say about the awkward piece. I think the big conference room full of people to network, I think a lot of people find that difficult and challenging. I do. I don't really like that process.
Mhm.
I don't find it extremely valuable. I have to do it. And sometimes it does pay off, but I find that one-on-one is much better. I actually test introvert, even though I do a lot of things that are extrovert. And I don't know, Audra, if you test introvert extroversion here. Is that something
Definitely
that's,
extroversion here.
yes. So the book Quiet, is that something that everybody knows about, do you think, Audra?
I know about Susan Cain and Quiet, but I don't think everybody does know.
It's a great book.
It's a
If you
great
feel
book.
like this is awkward, for example, that we're seeing on the screen right now.
Mhm.
So the book Quiet could help you a tremendous amount. It really teaches introverts at all ends of that spectrum, how to leverage the great things that they have in one-on-one discussions. And some introverts can be very effective at this process. If you look at the steps and the approach, and some of the best networkers can do one-on-one. Introverts probably wouldn't be the best networkers ever in that big room that we talked about, but a one-on-one, they can be much more effective. They're usually better listeners.
And that's why the preparing yourself, if you are going to an event, setting a couple of goals for yourself. I'm an introvert as well, and that's why this resonates with me. But if you set some goals, get there early, check out the environment, decide who you want to meet, all of those things take some of the awkwardness out and make you feel more comfortable. And I've learned that over the years.
So I do want to just say something real quick. And Dave, I did pretty well. I kept quiet for how long, Dave?
I knew you were going to come in, Steve, and I love when you do.
Okay.
Steve, by the way, Steve and I have known each other for about 15, maybe more than 15.
Long time.
Almost 20.
So I just want to remind everyone, and Dave and Debbie, you can comment too, that nearly everyone, maybe 99% of people have been helped by networking. So, for the students to remember, when you're asking someone for a meeting to network, to get information, they've been helped, and most people want to pay it forward and help people out.
I'd agree with that, and I'd like to point to Steve in this case. Steve has a reputation in not just his function of being a CFO, of very generous with his network, and he's helped so many people. I know other people that I've run into that I found out Steve knew later, so I found out independently that Steve gives a lot to his function, and helps those people when they're looking to make networking connections. He does that naturally. He's done it for a long time, and that comes back to Steve when Steve needs a connection or help with something, and he demonstrates that very, very well. He understands it's give to get, and that's a big part of networking. And people know that. Like, you're in this process of looking for a job, a start to your career, or your second career, taking some time off before you get your master's degree, and people will sense that you're just meeting with them to get your next job, or that you're really in it for relationship building, and you really are listening and thinking about how can I be of help to them. They'll know that, and they'll be more valuable to you, and you'll feel better about the process. This awkwardness comes from that. When I'm just bothering somebody, they don't really want to, I'm just being, and if you really go in, I remember my brother-in-law was in this search, and I think I've told this brother-in-law story a couple times. My brother-in-law, Bill, is a genius. He was an executive in a computer company for years, and one time he was in transition. He built his own house from the ground up. He was a pre-med student. He knows everything. He's like a Renaissance man. And he goes, Dave, I was in one of those roles where I didn't want to take these calls from people that wanted to network, because I didn't want to be bothered with it. And I don't want to be the person that's the bother. And I said, Bill, you have to change your attitude, because there's something that you're going to be able to do to help this person. If you look at it, relationship building, I know if you get to know what's going on at their work or in their life, there's going to be something that you're going to be able to add and make helpful to them. Now, maybe it's in the future, but maybe it would happen in the meeting. So if you go in knowing that there's going to be something about this relationship that will be long-term, and live, and approach networking like Steve Wasserman, you'll feel better about it. And the person you're networking with will sense it and feel better about it too. You'll have more confidence. They'll get that you're building a relationship that's not just about get me my next job.
Right. I think also, you know, surrounding yourself with, there are people out there that are connectors, and they have really good energy and are very comfortable introducing people to each other, either in an event or separately. And I think if you think of some of the people in your network that you know, maybe it's some of the other students, there are just some natural connectors out there. And I think they're really great people to be around. I know a few, and boy, when I go to an event, I love to be with them because they're going to introduce me to everybody who walks into that conversation. So look out for the connectors. Let's see. So keeping your network alive. So this is something, you know, that networking is sort of a lifelong skill. It doesn't go away once you're working. When we work with people in transition who have lost their jobs, we really encourage them to keep their network alive. And many times when they come out of one of our programs, they're like, oh my gosh, I will never not keep my network open while I'm working again. Because sometimes you get caught into a job, it's heads down, you're busy, you don't take the time to network, you don't take the time to go to events. And so it's really, really important to keep the network alive because you never know when you're going to need it. And then, as Dave said, you can help others. So set some goals for yourself that you're going to attend so many events a quarter. Keep it as a focus for yourself. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself. Make it the first thing you do, not the last. You can set up a spreadsheet of who you want to meet with and track those, do some follow-up, and sending articles of interest, which we already talked about. So now
Debbie, one more thing about follow-up.
Yep.
Think about how you follow up. We talked about some different things. Debbie talked about sending me something that's articles of interest. I talked about making sure you tie in and thank them and show something that they gave in their when you met with them that was helpful, a person or an idea. The other thing is think about how you send it. Is it going to be an email? Is it going to be a handwritten note? Those really stand out. It sounds old-fashioned, but I don't have very good handwriting. But we had an executive come in from Fidelity, and this was actually an interview story. But think about it for networking too. They had two really top candidates, and it was a pretty high-level job. And they had a decision-making team. There was 8 people on the decision-making team, and one person followed up really effectively with nice emails to everybody. The emails looked a lot alike, but there was some customization. And the other candidate had beautifully handwritten notes on beautiful cardstock, tying in something about that meeting they had with that person. And when they came to that decision-making team, that decision-making meeting because it was really even, it was almost even. They weren't sure who they were going to choose. They all came with those handwritten notes, and it really stood out. So not in every case. Again, I always go back to intuition. Think about, the situation. Maybe there's a timing issue where an email is more important. But if you want to stand out, a nice handwritten note can make a big difference, both in networking and interviewing.
And I just wanted to chime in here that there are a number of questions on this very topic of how do you keep your network alive. And certainly if other stories come to mind, Dave and Debbie, Steve, anyone, feel free to continue to share. Again, there were definitely a number of questions along these lines.
I'll add to that too. Debbie talked about the spreadsheet, and I think that's really powerful because it can be when you're networking effectively, and if you're meeting with somebody and they give you a couple names or introduce you and then you meet with them, you can see how this would get out of control. And a spreadsheet can really help you keep track of everybody. So you can put everybody that you've met with, everybody that you know, and then who they introduced you to, and then add those people to the list and who they introduced you, and it gets longer and longer. And then you can have your follow-up dates and the next thing that you need to do and the thing that you owe them and the thing they owe you, and create some spreadsheets. I know you're all good at spreadsheets at Bentley, so those technical skills improve to work. There's tools too. You can use Outlook. There's contact management, CRM tools that you can apps that you can use that might make it easier. But of networkers, I remember I have a lot of stories. This is somebody that Steve I think knows, and we were coaching him And he said, Dave, I burned through my network. I don't know what to do next. My network's burned. And I'm like, well, Bill, his name is Bill. I won't tell you his last name. Bill, if you're burned through your network, you're not doing it very well. When you're networking effectively, the list gets longer and longer and longer. You don't burn through it. It gets bigger and more robust, and you're getting deeper and closer to the hiring managers as you go through this process. It's not something you burn through. So think about it as a big research project, and you're trying to find everyone and everybody that's in the function you want to pursue, and you're just going to uncover it all, and you'll get there. It takes you got to meet about 25 people or correspond with about 25 people that could be your next boss before you get the job that's offered and you want. Could be the first one, could be the 50th, but we find with most candidates we're working with, you got to interact with about 25 people that could be your next boss. And it takes a lot of activities, emails, Zoom calls, phone calls, networking meetings, events. It takes about 10 things to get to a decision maker, 10 activities on your part. So if you think about it, the person that leads our consulting at Keystone says it's about 250 cups of coffee, and it may mix in, maybe now that's 150, maybe it's 25 cups of coffee and 225 Zoom meetings. But it's a lot of activity, and it's not how long will it take to get that offer that you want. It's how quickly can I get to 25-ish people that could be my next boss for a conversation or correspondence.
Okay, great. So I'm just trying to watch the time.
Am I going long, Debbie, again, like last year? Debbie had to admonish me after the last one. I think I'm going there again. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You're doing great, Dave. You're doing great. Audra, just want to do a time check. This goes till 3, right?
This does go to 3. And so
great.
we were thinking that we would have a Q&A at the end, but I think we're doing really well incorporating them in the presentation. So continue.
All right. So in preparing for this today, I had a conversation with Audra, and she is obviously your biggest fans. And we talked about sometimes if you haven't worked, or if you haven't had a lot of work experience, maybe you have, but really, how do you talk about what advantages you bring to the table from being a Bentley graduate or international student? So we started to list. So I'm going to start to, do they have an opportunity to respond here? Can we do a poll or no?
You can have them raise their hand if you'd like, or answer yes or no. Okay,
great. So what I wanted to show is just starting here. So some of the things that we see that you bring to an organization is certainly your technical capabilities, your analytic savvy, and in some cases you're multilingual. Those are really important attributes that you want to be able to talk about in a way that, or a way of be able to demonstrate, that this is what you've studied, this is what Bentley offers, and that you have some things over other students that maybe won't be out there. But I'd like to ask, using these 3, what other things do you think that as a Bentley graduate student you can offer?
Maybe can they do some chat through the question chat to Audra? Just like add other things, and maybe through questions.
Just as they're asking questions, maybe they could do it through that.
Yeah, just make comments about things that
the
advantages you might have.
Yeah, we'll make this a little bit more interactive.
And Audra can read them off to us. Maybe go through the other 2 while they're doing that, Deb, as well.
I think we wanted to see what they came up with.
All right.
Okay, so the question is, Debbie, again, can you repeat it?
Yes, the question is, what are the advantages of hiring a Bentley graduate or an international student?
Okay, everybody. If you could actually answer that question in the chat. Okay, keep going. Debbie, did you have anything to add while they're doing that?
No, we'll just wait a minute and see what they come up with. If it's taking too long, we'll unveil.
I'd say not only just a Bentley grad in general, it's maybe even something about you that's an advantage or a differentiator, something that you bring.
That's exactly right, your own qualities. Ooh, it looks like we have 27. Wow.
Yeah, we're
This is
getting a lot of
great.
responses now. So you can see it here. I'm not sure if Dave can, but I know Debbie can.
I can
Yes, I
see
can.
that there.
I can see them.
Oh, you can see them. So you can feel
Yeah.
free. So
Strategic
team,
thinking.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
Can you see them all, Debbie? I'm seeing them one at a time as they come up.
No, I'm not seeing them at all.
If you go to the comments, the chat section, you can, but
Okay.
you can certainly
Innovative
see
thinking,
passion,
discipline.
leadership, analytics. Leadership comes up again.
working in teams, diverse
Creativity,
groups.
innovative
excellent.
thinking. We have wonderful students with
You
wonderful
do.
attributes.
You do. Things that we didn't even think of that we need
Tech
to add
skills,
to this.
business
this list.
insights. Yep.
Yep, academic projects with real world experience and cases, optimism.
I love this. This is
Market
great.
insights. Yep.
Audra, is there a way for you to capture all this?
Honestly, I think I have to figure that out.
That's great.
I know.
Willingness
So now-
to learn and grow. I like
Yep.
that one too.
Yeah. So we came up with, I'm going to show you some of the ones that we came up with. Is it done?
Well, they're still keeping coming in.
They're continuing. Keep
They're
going if you'd like.
continuing.
Going,
But Debbie, feel free to continue yourself.
Okay. So once again, you've got some very strong ones there. Maybe we should have asked you this before the presentation, but so certainly a desire to work. You're not afraid to work hard. You're a risk taker. If you have, either come back to school after some time off, or if you came to this country to join an international program, that's a skill that everybody can, that's not a risk everybody can take. And you've done it and you're doing it well. And so that is something else that you might be able to talk to in certain roles. If an organization is looking for someone who can be adaptable and not be afraid to do something different and take some risks. You're creative, you're adaptable, and then you came up with some of your own special qualities.
Yeah, a lot of these that we have in the boxes came up on the chats going by. I saw.
Yep. So this is important for you to keep, either write them down or keep them in your mind as part of your conversation when you're in an interview, where you might not have all the work experience that others might have out there, but you've got a lot of other things that you bring to the table. And go ahead, Dave.
One of our other consultants that works with Debbie and me, Penny, she gives advice as she's starting with a candidate, coaching them on the things that we're talking about today and other things, interviewing and negotiating and all those things. She recommends embarking on this process to write down some of these things. She says, write down 7 to 10 things that when you're doing those things, get energy from them. And have some of them be non-work related, non-skill related, could be photography or something. And she says that can be a real motivator for you as you're thinking about, where do I want to bring my skills? How do I want to talk about myself? How do I differentiate what I bring to a job? Because all the job specs are going to look a lot alike. And how do you stand out? And the other thing she'd say she recommends to do, especially this will help with resume and interviewing as well. What are the things you're proudest of that you've accomplished at Bentley, at other work, in your life? And again, having a list like that can be very helpful too, and also motivating. They can be
very good advice.
Think about,
yes.
How you think about interviewing, and how you think about how do you differentiate yourself from all the other candidates that are out there going for a similar job that might have a similar educational background.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, these are just some tactical tips. We've kind of touched upon some of them. So once again, when you've got a meeting scheduled, a networking meeting, you want to make sure that you clarify the meeting objective, have an agenda, including questions to ask. So after you've done your research, you may have some questions that you would like some clarification on. researching the company, obtaining background information on the person you're going to meet. See if you have any common connections when you're doing that. LinkedIn is a great tool for that. If you're not on LinkedIn, you'll want to get a good profile up. You'll want to, it would be very, very helpful to you in doing this kind of preparation for a meeting. We understand you've been taught the 30-second commercial or elevator pitch. I'm not sure, there's different terms for it, but we'll want to practice that so that if you are out networking, what if you're, if you're at one of those big events that we talked about, a networking event, you want to succinctly be able to tell somebody what you're looking to do and how they might help you. So practicing that and saying it will really help you. You'll want to have some marketing collateral, so your resume, get some business cards. You can go online and they're pretty inexpensive to get some business cards. And Dave mentioned the networking profile. And then also think of ways you can give back to your networking contact. So, I think that you bring some things to the workplace, particularly the analytical piece, the analytics that you're learning. It's a really big deal in all aspects of business today. And I think that, if you have a skill set around that, that would be really helpful to an organization, you might be able to give back in terms of maybe helping them with something that they're struggling with in the workplace. Maybe they're trying to do some analysis on something and they don't know the right approach. You might have an expertise that you can share about that. And then we talked about this earlier, just prepare yourself mentally to have no expectations of the individual knowing about job openings. And we talked about that. That's it, they may, but they may not, but it's good to be top of mind. When you're in the meeting, the networking meeting, you're progressively going to be building some trust and support by establishing the commonalities and some rapport, which we talked about, introducing yourself and the value that you add. And I think a good way of showing, as opposed to just coming out and saying all the things, the value that you add, is just talking about maybe your what you enjoy and what, you think that you enjoy it because you're good at it. There's a good way of talking about the value you add, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm really good at this, this, and this. Express, think about those things that you're good at, and it will come through when you're talking with them. The enthusiasm in your voice will change if it's something that you enjoy doing and it's the value you bring. Restate some specific goals of the meeting. And this could be, I would see this being, just want to tap into you and your network about who you might know, where there might be openings. Really, this is just an informational meeting for us to get to know each other and to see who, what I'd love your recommendations and your ideas about where I might look for jobs. So you're asking for information, you're asking for advice, and seeing if they're willing to share some contacts with you. If you schedule a meeting and you don't want to take up too much time, so if you ask for 30 minutes, you should close the meeting on time unless the other person would like to continue the conversation. But it's always a good practice about 15 minutes before. You can either do it at the start of the meeting or during the meeting, just doing a time check and asking, what's their drop dead time? What time do we need to close the meeting? And then staying in touch. And we talked about different ways to do that.
Debbie, can I just chime in here?
Sure.
Related to that, many students always ask the question about how much longer. So after that first meeting,
yep.
I know there's no exact answer, but again, it's a question that typically comes up regarding, when can they ask for the job? So maybe they had this initial meeting. Would it be the next meeting? How do you build that relationship to the point where you can ask to see if there are opportunities available? Because at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for.
Well, are
Right.
you saying an interview, Audra, or you think this is a networking meeting in an organization you'd like to work at?
That's right. So the networking meeting that we were just talking about, so maybe that happens, and then where do you go from there in
Mhm.
terms of something actionable?
So if it's networking, I guess you can go a couple different ways, right? So you can talk about going to make connections and ideas and advice to get a role like this at an organization like yours or others. Is there anybody that you'd recommend I talk to your organization? Or here's some others, you might even show the target list of organizations you think might be a good connection for me. There's somebody that might be closer to the hiring manager in this role. Who would you recommend I talk to? So that might be a way to get there. If you think you're sitting across from somebody that might have direct knowledge
Mhm.
and might even hire for your type of role, I don't think it's bad to ask. Do you know of any, are they hiring for people with my kind of background? Are they looking for roles like this and this, the ones that you're pursuing? It's okay to ask that question. I wouldn't start there. Do
Mhm.
the things that Debbie said, build the rapport, talk about the ideas and advice, talk about the things you love doing and you hope to do in your career, find out about what their role is all about and what they're focused on. And then as you get into the conversation, say, well, then who would you recommend I talk to externally? Do you know if they're hiring or who would hire for those kinds of roles inside of your organization? Okay to ask. It's,
Yep.
again, trust your judgment. If this
Yep.
person seems very nervous and awkward and doesn't want to share a lot of information, it might not be the place to go. If somebody's really open and talking to you about everything and telling you everything about their company, it's probably safe to say, are they hiring in my function in the places
Right.
I'm looking to? It's okay to do.
I would
Yeah.
also suggest doing the research ahead of time, seeing
Yes.
see what's posted on their website.
Right.
And if there are jobs that you're qualified for, I think that it's okay to say, hey, I saw this job, just wondering, this could be at the end after you've built rapport. Would you be comfortable giving my resume to the hiring manager? Or who would you suggest I talk to about this job? I think I have the qualifications as listed. What would you suggest? And
Yeah. And
that's
it's
something
later in the conversation. And it's
later
okay to do
in the
that.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. And just to clarify from what you both have said, is that there is no exact answer, that it really is subjective and it depends on the situation. So as Dave said, if it feels like it's going in, you're developing a good rapport and it seems like it makes sense, great. But if it doesn't, don't. And maybe it'll
Right.
take a few more conversations before that'll happen, or even longer.
Right. And you start with experience, you build that muscle Dave was talking about so that your gut can guide you. Your intuition gets better and better about the outreach attempts and how often to do that.
And if you go into a company and there are positions, you looked, of course you would have looked before going in for a networking meeting. Apply. Don't wait. Apply through the career site, or if it's on Indeed, wherever, apply to the job and tell them you have, but then it's an added thing. If everybody's applying and there's a lot of people, a lot of competition, is it with an internal referral? And so if you build a good rapport with this person and demonstrated some credibility and say, there was a position I actually applied for at your organization. It was this and this. Do you happen to know who the hiring manager might be for that? Would you feel comfortable either connecting me to that person or sending my resume and I can send you the information I put through your career site. So that's okay to ask, especially if you feel like you're building a good rapport and this person's pretty comfortable with you.
Yes.
And I just want to be mindful again of the time. It is about 5 minutes of 3. So I guess we should think about wrapping things up. And I know there are some more slides to go. So what would you like to do, Debbie?
Let's just see. On this slide, I just would like to say, remember to send a thank you note to both the person who referred you as well as who you met with. It can be handwritten or an email. I think email is probably more prevalent today, but
Get your thing.
people still like handwritten notes too, and it will make you stand out. So I think that's really important. Hold on one second. Let me just see if I can just see where we are here. Okay, so one other concept is, in networking is you're targeting the hidden job market. So when you meet with people, they might know about some resignations or retirements or some changes in the company, from a reorg or some newly budgeted positions. These are all things that aren't hitting, they're probably not on their website, they're not on a job board. And what we say is you're trying to get into the hidden job market before others know about the opportunity. And by networking, you're more likely to tap into this hidden job market. So trying to get these face-to-face meetings with some insiders and access to unadvertised positions is a really strong strategy to try and do that. So just keep in mind that the jobs you see on a website, those aren't the only jobs many times that are open within the organization, and they're looking to fill via referrals. And also keep in mind that employers many times pay, there's employees can get paid for good referrals. So if they make a referral of somebody and you're hired, then they can actually get compensated for that. So sometimes they're looking, they're happy to do that. But as Dave said, you've got to build that rapport first. You've got to make them comfortable with you. They've got to feel like you're a good fit for the organization before all that would happen. And this is just a summary of what we talked about. I'll just give you a minute to take a look at these, and maybe we could take one question, one or two, and then we'll be done.
Are we, no questions, Audra?
Does anybody have any specific questions for David and Debbie? I know that we do have some here. Do you see any there in the chat box that you are interested to answer? Let's see.
I'll let you pick one, Audra.
Okay.
What do you think?
So we've addressed a couple of them.
Okay.
There was one that was focused on the first impression,
Okay.
and how important the first impression is in the interview and in networking.
That
What do
is
you
important. I think,
Yeah.
the first thing, it starts with being on time. So, you want to be sure you're there early so that you're on time and you're there maybe ahead of that person.
Yeah, the other, okay, you're going to go ahead, Deb?
Yep. I was going to say, it can be very tricky trying to figure out what to wear to these things. I would say most business transactions are pretty much business casual now, but you want to look neat and clean and present yourself in a way that an organization would want to have you in their,
They say
as part of their
dress one level up from the way they dress there. So
Yep.
if they're jeans and t-shirts,
right.
you might want to be jeans and a collar shirt. If they're business casual, where they might wear dress shirts and pantsuits and suits, you might want to have a full, like a more traditional suit. So you want to just be one level up
Right.
than the way the environment is there. And you could do a little research. Usually it's maybe through you can find out on LinkedIn if you know somebody that works there and you're going in to meet with somebody else, you might be able to find out.
Right. I just bumped into somebody, a professional who's been in the career for a long time, has lots of experience, and she had been in for a first round of interviews, and they asked her to dress down for the next round. So sometimes you can ask, and she was at an event before her interview, and she said, "Do I look okay? I was asked to dress down." And she was, business casual, but looked very professional, and it was very appropriate but she was uncomfortable because she comes from the school of maybe I should have a suit on. And
yeah, I think it's okay to err on the side of a little bit up, but
Yeah.
to Debbie's point, it's okay to acknowledge, like I remember one time I went to this company and they were more the jeans and t-shirt look and I had a suit on, and I said when I was leaving, "You'll never see me wear a suit here again."
Yeah.
So just acknowledging, but I think there's a thing about energy. I know we're at the time limit now, but there's about energy and listening, asking questions, having good energy when you walk in and connecting, looking eye to eye, smiling.
Mhm.
Those matter. It's not a deal breaker if you get off on exactly not the perfect start, to the question, how important is it? But you want to try to do it as well as you can because it matters.
Mhm.
So
And
we
I-
do have other questions. We do have
Oh,
other questions, and I'm not sure if people want to stay on for a little bit longer, Dave and Debbie, if you're available. But maybe we can do one question. But I did want to say that again, there's been a lot of great information shared with a lot of enthusiasm from people who have been in this business for double-digit years. So we're very thankful to you, David, Debbie, for sharing your expertise with us.
You're
And
welcome.
kind of to the first question, there was a question about how do students connect with you? How do they network with you? So would you be okay if they connected with you via LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Would you
In
share
fact,
your email address? What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah,
Just
LinkedIn.
let
if
us
you-
know that they were participated in this, that, we met via this session today, just so we have some context, but yes.
Absolutely. Just,
Perfect.
There's a little place when you send an invite, I think you all know. You can say, so if you just say, met you at Bentley on the webinar, that would be great.
Sounds good.
And if you found some of this to be valuable, it would be great to let us know that too, so that we know what to include. Should we be invited back again to do this for another group?
And kind of on that note, if many students have been asking to have access to your PowerPoint, is that okay that we share that with them? We actually said yes without asking, but
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep, that's okay.
okay, just wanted to make sure about that,
Sure.
which is great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking that we probably will be sensitive to everybody's time. Again, say very much a thank you to the students for participating. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all the questions, but maybe what I'll do is take a look at them afterwards and share them with you all if you have some quick thoughts, and we can get them to the students if possible, or we'll go through them ourselves. We have recorded this session, so I will do my best to make that available along with the PowerPoint presentation. And I guess I wanted to ask Steve or Debbie, David, if you had any final words before we sign off today.
I just want to say thank you for this experience. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, we would have preferred in person, but given the situation, this was the next best, and I think hopefully it worked well for everybody.
I echo that. It was great to meet you all, and thank you for all your participation. There's a lot of great comments coming across here. I wish we could have got to all of them in the session.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Dave and Debbie. Rest assured you will be invited back each and every year, no question about that. And thank you for all the students that spent the time. We hope you found this valuable.